Today's 5-minute devotional, we're going to talk about a couple of guys who spent a lot of their time living in a context where it really would have cost them something to be known as disciples of Jesus. And so they were what you might call secret disciples. And that's a concept that might be familiar to a lot of us today, that there might be parts of our lives in which we feel like we need to be secret disciples, that to be known as somebody who seriously follows Jesus might have some kind of social or real consequences. So that's not a new thing. And we see it right here in the New Testament, even in the gospel itself. So what happens with them is there comes a time when they have to make a choice, whether they're going to be public about their following of Jesus. So let's see how this goes. This is John chapter 19, 38 through 42. This is actually just after Jesus died on the cross. Later, Joseph of Arimathea asked Pilate for the body of Jesus. Now Joseph was a disciple of Jesus, but secretly, because he feared the Jewish leaders. With Pilate's permission, he came and took the body away. He was accompanied by Nicodemus, the man who earlier had visited Jesus at night. Nicodemus brought a mixture of myrrh and aloes, about 75 pounds. Taking Jesus' body, the two of them wrapped it with the spices in strips of linen. This was in accordance with the Jewish burial customs. At the place where Jesus was crucified, there was a garden, and in the garden was a new tomb in which no one had ever been laid. Because it was the Jewish day of preparation, and since the tomb was nearby, they laid Jesus there. So, we've got somebody we haven't encountered before, Joseph of Arimathea. Comes up in other Gospels, hasn't come up in John yet, and he asked for Jesus' body. Now, the other person is Nicodemus. He might sound familiar. We ran into him way back in chapter 3 when he came to Jesus at night. And he came to Jesus at night probably because he didn't want people to know that he was talking with Jesus. Both of these guys were part of the ruling class of the Jewish leaders. And Joseph was like in the same body they were that condemned Jesus, although it's said in another gospel that Joseph dissented to that. And we see Nicodemus sort of half-heartedly speaking up for Jesus earlier in the gospel too, but now they come to this point, and Jesus is dead. But they have the power and the authority and the wealth to give him a really proper and good burial. And so they decide that this is the moment when they're going to do something public for Jesus because out of love and the decision to honor him. And so Joseph goes to Pilate, the Roman official, and gets Jesus' body. They prepare him with all of the burial stuff. I mean, burial's expensive. It is this today, it was back then. And they give him a king's burial with all the best stuff. And lay him in a new tomb. That seems weird. Wouldn't all tombs be new? But no, most of them were used back then. I don't have time to explain that. But in another gospel, we read that it was actually Joseph's own tomb. Jesus went in Joseph's own tomb, this guy. And there's some amazing symbology of that, of, Jesus taking his place in his own tomb. But what I want to finish with is just this idea that these guys who were secret disciples, they came to a point where either they were going to have to walk away from Jesus at this point, or they were going to have to do something public. And they chose to acknowledge that they were disciples. And when they did, they had this special role to play with him that no one else around him could do. No one else could have afforded, that we know of, this kind of treatment for him, for his burial. And so if any of you are in this situation where you're like, I feel like I'm a secret disciple and it's going to come to a head someday. Maybe Jesus has something special for you when you're willing to just be public about, hey, I'm a disciple, I'm a follower of Jesus.